Again at another war room. Really flattered that you've asked me this third time. And I feel like when I am with people from Ref Church that I'm among friends. So this past spring when we had so much water that our church had to close on a Sunday morning, and we decided we were going to go to church somewhere. I told Carol, I said, I'm going to go to church. And she said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Ref Church. And so she said, I'll go too. There were a number of places I could have mentioned that she would have said, well, I think I'll just stay home. But when she heard I was coming to Ref Church, then she came, and we were blessed to be with you on that Sunday morning. It wasn't long after that Bert called me and said, we're getting ready to attend an event, and we'd kind of like to have a little bit of support. And those weren't his exact words, but that was the gist of it. So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me to lock arms with my brothers from Ref Church. And so I was able to attend that event. I always enjoy being with Bert and Jerry and Tanner and you folks. Bert makes me want to play guitar more. I do play, but you make me want to play and encourage me to sing. You're probably the second manliest music minister on the planet. Jim Bob Outland at our church has got to take first place. Man, the guy looks like he played NFL football. And I like to see music ministers who are obviously manly, because so often they're kind of sissified. And so I'm glad to see a masculine music minister here at Ref Church. Not surprised at all about that, and enjoy that ministry. So I'm getting ready to talk to you about marriage, and what I'm going to talk to you about is not based on my experience. It's going to be based on the Scripture, but you may be interested to know a little bit of my experience. So Carol and I, my wife's with me this morning, we've been married for over 37 years. So we got married in 1988, and it was a rocky beginning. So we both were older. I was almost 28. She was almost 29 when we got married. And the Lord immediately started blessing us with children. And over the next few years, over the next 13 years, we were blessed with 6 daughters. So no sons, 6 daughters. And all of them are out of the house now, except for the youngest, who's 23. But things were not just really great for several years. So she's a little embarrassed by this, but I think it helps people to know. For those first several years, the main reason we stayed married was because we promised God that we would. And so we were both mature Christians. She had been a Christian for 8 or 9 years. When we got married, I had been a Christian for probably 12 or 15 years. And so I'd been preaching for 10 years. So we were not neophytes to the spiritual life. She was a respected member of the church where she was a member. And so just being a Christian, just being a mature Christian, doesn't mean that you're going to have an easy marriage. And but there is that promise that you made God that you would stay married. And since you're going to stay married, you might as well make the best of it. And that's kind of a low bar way of putting it. You might as well make the best of it, but let's see how God can teach us to make the best of it. And so we've been married for 37 years now, and marriage still takes work. So I suppose that there are marriages where everybody just knows exactly what's expected of them in the marriage, and the wife's 100% pleased with the husband, and the husband is 100% pleased with the wife. But I suspect that those marriages are fairly rare. I think that most marriages just require ongoing, deliberate activity to make sure that it is a God-honoring marriage, and to do your best to make sure that it is an enjoyable marriage. I think those two things go together, as I hope will become clear. Now, it is a little disconcerting to recognize how little the Bible has to say about how to have a godly marriage. In fact, there's more direct teaching in the Bible on how to cope with skin diseases than how to have a happy marriage. You got like 3 chapters in Leviticus on, if you've got mold in your house, here's what you do. If you've got mold in your clothes, here's what you do. It's like 3 chapters? 3 chapters of how to deal with skin diseases and mold? And then you've just got a little peek in Ephesians 5, a little peek in Colossians 3, a little bit in Matthew 19, a little bit in Genesis 1, Genesis 2. I mean, you could fit it all on one page, easy. All the direct teaching that the Bible has to say about what constitutes a godly marriage. But what we have is very concentrated. So we'll look at all those scriptures today, except for the one in Colossians, which is largely a repeat of what we'll see in Ephesians chapter 5. So it's not an insurmountable task I'm going to be speaking about 2 50-minute sessions. And so for 100 minutes, we're going to cover fairly thoroughly all that the Bible has to say directly about the mission of the home and the nurture of the home. But it's very concentrated. So the last scripture that we'll look at is, wives, submit to your husbands as the church submits to Christ. Well, that just opens up a whole lot of information, because there's a lot of information about how the church submits to Christ. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Well, there's a whole lot of information about how Christ loved the church. And so this is like those little cans of orange juice concentrate that my mom used to buy. Frozen concentrate, and you can't eat it or drink it the way that it is. You got to dump it into a pitcher and add water to it. And that's the way that it is with this very concentrated teaching that we have in the Bible. Let's open our Bibles, first of all, to Matthew chapter 19. This may seem, if you know what Matthew 19 talks about, this may seem like a strange place to begin a series of 2 messages on the mission and nurture of the home. And so that's the topic that has been assigned to me, the mission and nurture of the home. And I don't plan to make it 2 separate things. It's all mixed up together. So it's the mission and the nurture of the home are all going to be mixed up together. And at the end of the second session, I plan to make a few obvious points of application from it, but it's all going to be mixed in together. So the reason Matthew 19 may seem like a strange place for us to begin is because it is asking a question about divorce. But in answering the question about divorce, Jesus lays down a principle that will yield a lot of fruit for us. Let's see what it is. Matthew 19, verse 1. Now when Jesus had finished these sayings, he went away from Galilee and entered the region of Judea beyond the Jordan, and large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. And the Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the 2 shall become one flesh. So they are no longer 2, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery." The disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said to them, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth. So a eunuch would be someone who is not interested in sex, not interested in marriage. There are some who've been that way from birth. There are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men. And of course, in those days, if a man had multiple wives, a king might hire a man to oversee his harem, and he wouldn't want this overseer, to be sexually interested in the wives, and so he would castrate the man so that he wouldn't be interested. So that's not a good thing. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. So this would be someone who has decided, I am not driven with passion to have sex. I can live happily without having sex. And therefore, I will not marry so that I might more effectively serve the Lord. And then Jesus concludes by saying, let the one who is able to receive this receive it. So singleness is a legitimate option. There are advantages to remaining single. But I suppose all of you are either married or all of you are engaged. But there may be single people who will listen to this if it's posted on the internet. Staying single is a legitimate option, but you should not do it for the reasons that most people remain single today. So most people remain single today because they just don't want to have the burden and the responsibility of taking care of a family or just being devoted to one person. Their feeling is like the disciples, when they said, well, if you can't divorce, if you're stuck for life, then who wants to get married? And that's kind of the perspective of the world. If you're going to be stuck for life, then why get married? And Jesus says, well, there are some people that are going to be better able to serve the kingdom of heaven if they remain single. So that will come up only very slightly later on in the messages today. But I want to acknowledge it right here. The main reason that we're starting off with Matthew chapter 19 is because Jesus, in order to answer the question about divorce, he takes us back to the beginning and he says, this is the way it was in the beginning. So there were some bad things that happened to marriage under the Old Covenant. Polygamy was proliferated. We read of several polygamous marriages where a man has more than one wife. We don't ever read of a woman having more than one husband. Economically, that was just not a possibility in those days. But if a man had enough money, and when we read in the Bible, it's always someone who is an important figure, someone who is a king or someone who is a patriarch who has more than one wife. And then there's this to think about. There is not one polygamous marriage in the Bible that is spoken of as if it were a happy union, a happy situation. So David, messed up situation. Solomon, messed up. Elkanah, with his wives Peninnah and Hannah, messed up situation. Every polygamous marriage that we read about in the Bible is messed up. Jacob's married to both Rachel and Leah. Constant conflict in that household. That led one of my favorite preachers, Alexander White, to say, polygamy is just a Latin word for cesspool. Of course it's not, but his point is well made. And so polygamy is in the Bible, and nowhere does God say, don't do it. And then divorce becomes accepted because of the hardness of the heart. There's situations where under the Old Covenant it was better to just, to go ahead and divorce the woman, but you've got to specify that she's not been sexually untrue to you, because that would be the assumption. If you've gotten rid of this woman, it's because she's been sexually unfaithful to you. And so you've got to write out a certificate of divorce that says it's not because she was immoral. It's just because I can't stand her messy ways or whatever the case was. So it was really a protection for the woman. But Jesus implicitly condemns both polygamy and divorce by saying, let's go back to the beginning and see how God originally designed things. And so that's what we're going to do in just a few minutes. We're going to go back to the beginning and see how God originally designed things. But there are several things that Jesus points out right here. And he says, if you'll just think about how God originally designed things, you're going to notice several important things. I think of the creation story, as it's described in the Bible, as something like a dumb show. D-U-M-B. And that phrase, dumb show, became used in the English language before dumb became a pejorative term. So, years ago, dumb didn't mean that you were stupid. It meant that you were unable to speak. And so there's a literary device, shows up in plays, theatrical productions, something that's called a dumb show. So if you're familiar with Shakespeare's Hamlet, there's a dumb show in Shakespeare's Hamlet, where the actors come out on the stage and they, without saying a word, they enact the essence of the play that they're getting ready to put on. I'll give you a little dumb show right now. So, the guy was sleepy. He gets a cup of coffee, and now he's wide awake. Or Red Bull, or whatever it is that's full of caffeine. Makes him wide awake. And so I didn't need words to tell you that. You were able to figure it out just by watching. So I think Jesus is saying, if you'll just think about what happened in the beginning, it's like a dumb show. You can figure out some of the important pieces of what makes for a marriage that God approves of. And he mentions some of those things here. So he says in verse 4, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? So I can imagine that in the 2,000 years that have passed since Jesus spoke these words and pointed it out, for the most part, people have said, well, duh. Obviously, he made them male and female. And there's probably never been a generation where that statement is as important as it is now. That God did not make them some kind of mixture between male and female. He made them male and female. Now, a couple of years ago, I was asked to speak at our men's breakfast. And it was a topic along these lines, I can't remember, and I was talking about male and female. And I pointed out, what I'm going to point out to you right now, that male and female is primarily a physiological description. And so at this men's breakfast, it was streamed online, and then it wasn't, I think before the day was over, that it started receiving criticism. I just don't think that was very helpful. And someone who's been through sexual abuse is going to be really put off by what Dr. Orrick said. And maybe it's fine if you're just talking to your men, but to put it on the internet is dangerous. And so there was that came in. And then within a day or two, I received an email from the organizer of a Reformed conference that's in Branson, Missouri, and the organizer said, saw your presentation on men and women, want you to come and speak at our conference. And then Dallas, the head of our men's ministry, is here, and it wasn't long until someone in his acquaintance said, I want to go to church at a place where they say that. And if I'm remembering correctly, that person is now a member of our church. Is that right? Yeah. And so this kind of teaching that we're getting right now and going over is going to be offensive to the world. But for the people of God, there are going to be people who say, finally, somebody is standing up and speaking the obvious. Men and women are different, but they're made so that they fit together. And that sounds a little crass, But that's really what Jesus is saying here. Now let's take a look at it. It says, he made them male and female. So there was male and female. There was only one. So that does away with polygamy. Adam never had two Eves that were brought to him. He had only one. And then he says, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife. And that is a delicate way of referring to the act of marriage. That's a delicate way of referring. It's not just that he's holding her and keeping her back from the waves, like that very good graphic that we saw a few minutes ago. It is that he is holding her fast, and they're being intimate with one another. They become one flesh. And so Jesus points out that when a male and a female are joined together, there is something new that is created. It is a new unity that transcends the sum of the parts. So it's not just a man and a woman sharing things 50-50. It's a man and a woman who have become one flesh. And we'll see a little bit later what the Bible teaches about being one flesh. But as an illustration, I thought about bringing here a piece of paper, and on one side of the piece of paper coloring with a yellow crayon, and on the other side of the piece of paper coloring with a blue crayon, and then using the blue and the yellow to color over each other in the middle. And what do I end up with if I mix the yellow and the blue together? I mix up with green. It's neither blue nor yellow. When you look at something green, you don't think, well, that's especially blue or that's especially yellow, usually, unless you're just looking at it analytically. You see it as something different. It's green. And that's the way that the Lord looks at a marriage when a man and a woman have been joined in a covenant and have been joined together sexually. They're no longer blue and yellow. They have become green. And so he says, let what God has joined together, let not man separate. So here's another point, and that is that in a marriage, God is involved. So I don't think that this applies exclusively to Christian marriages. I think that in any marriage where a man and a woman, they may be unconverted, but when they covenant together that we're going to stay together for life, and they consummate the marriage, that God is involved in that union, and the Lord's teaching is don't separate it, keep it together. Now Jesus is making reference to Genesis chapter 1, so let's go back to Genesis chapter 1, and we'll begin seeing here what are several features of the mission that has been given to men and women as married couples. And the first thing that we will see here is that men and women together are responsible to reflect the image of God. And that together we are able to do that more effectively than we are alone. So let's see what the Bible says here. We'll start with verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image." Now I'm reading from the ESV. I don't know if you are, but if you are, then you see there's a little note there. And at the bottom of the page it says, the Hebrew word for man, Adam, or Adam, is the generic term for mankind and becomes the proper name, Adam. So I think that the context reveals that the Lord is here saying, we're going to create humans, not just the man. We're going to create the man first. That becomes clear in chapter 2. But we're going to create humans, and that humans are going to bear the image of God, and humans will consist of both male and female. I think that's clear from the context. Let's continue. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. See, that's It's not been exactly clear up to this point that he has both male and female in mind, but now it is. He created them male and female. And so we'll pick up the text there in just a minute. But let's first of all spend a few minutes thinking about our marriages are intended to reflect the image of God and show who God is. Now, there are ways that a man by himself can demonstrate the glory of God, the image of God. So let's just think about some of the characteristics that the average man has or ought to have that are also true of God. So the average man is stronger than the average woman. So let's put that down. The average man is strong. The average man has the propensity to conquer things more than the average woman. So guys, there's some women who like to hunt, but I would say that the percentage of women who hunt in comparison to men is very, very small. In various other competitive sports, you can find, there are examples of women who are highly competitive, but it's nothing compared to men. So let's just mark that down as one of the things. Thank you, Bert. I appreciate the water. My problem is not too little water. My problem is too much cream in my coffee. But thank you, and that may help. But I clear my throat a lot, so hope it doesn't bother you too much. I usually don't even think about it. So a man by himself is strong. A man by himself is more motivated towards competition, towards conquest. That makes him especially good at providing and protecting. And all of those are qualities that we can see image forth good things that we see in God. God is strong. God is conquering sinners. God is conquering the satanic forces that are marshaled against him. God is conquering. God protects his people. God provides for his people. So a man by himself can show that pretty well. And then there are, here's my illustration. So this is a stick of hedge apple wood. You may call it Osage orange, or if you're from the South, you might have heard it called bodark. And so let's let this stick of wood represent the man. And there are certain things that this stick of wood can do fairly well. You could use it as a walking stick by itself. It's kind of sharp on one end. You could use it as a sword or a spear. You could use it as a tomato stake. I mean, there are just a variety of things that this very stiff piece of wood could be used for. You could use it as a bat for a while. Useful. I'm not going to take the string off of this bow, but let's let the string represent the woman. So I made this bow, made this string, and so I look at it and I think, that's pretty. That's a good-looking bow right there. The string, but we're talking about the string now. So the string is beautiful. Here's a string that has a loop on both ends, and there are no knots in it. How does that happen? Well, I'll have to teach you sometime. And it's got some nice little balls of fur here. That's attractive. Keeps the string from going twang. Just kind of gives a little thump when you shoot it. String's useful. I mean, you could use this string to tie the tomato to the tomato stake. You can use this string to be a shoestring. There are just almost no end of things that you can do with a string. But what you can't do with this stick by itself and what you can't do with this string by itself is you can't shoot an arrow. But when they go together, then you've got beauty and strength and functionality when it all goes together. I'll string this up, and if you're interested in looking at it during the break, you're welcome to. Just ask you don't let go of the string. You can pull it back a little bit, but don't let go of the string because it's never been pulled past 28 inches. And that's my draw length, and so I made it to to be pulled back at 28 inches and no farther. So if you know that your pull is less than 28 inches, then you can do that. Now you've got something really useful. You might have been able to make a snare out of the string, but now you can shoot a rabbit. I got the string on upside down, but we'll not worry about that. I'll come back to that a little bit later when we come to children and the arrows. So the point that I'm making now is that a man, like that bow by itself, can image forth certain things about God. And a woman by herself can image forth certain important things about the character and attributes of God. But together, they make a more complete picture of the image of God. And this is one of the primary reasons that God made humans. But this passage of Scripture indicates the male and the female, and it goes into talking about marriage. So there are numerous places in the Bible where God's power is joined together with his mercy, and power is, you might think of, more of a masculine virtue, and mercy more of a feminine virtue. Oh Lord, I've heard that you are powerful and that you are merciful. And there's just a lot of scriptures. Psalm 62, 10 and 11 come to mind. And then God is just. He is inflexibly just, but he's also gracious. And that inflexible justice, I take that to be a very strong masculine virtue. Grace is what we might call more of a feminine virtue. And both of the things go together. And so one of the primary purposes of a marriage is for us together to show to the world what God is like, to be his image bearers. Now here in Genesis chapter 1, it gives us a second mission of marriage. Not only are we to image forth the image of God, but we are also to exercise dominion over the earth and subdue it. So specifically, as mentioned here, that the Lord says, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And similar to my comment that for 2,000 years, most people would have not seen the significance of God creating humans male and female, distinctively male and female. So also, I think for 6,000 years, nobody would have said, well, of course we're supposed to reign over the animals. Why are you even saying that? Of course we're going to use animals to help us. And then today, it's like, I think as a result, big picture, as a result of the theory of evolution, where humans are reduced to just being very complex animals, there are a lot of people who are saying, what right do we have to tell the animals what to do? And if you don't believe that that is real, then just take a walk on a sidewalk where people are walking their dogs. And you will see that the average person has no clue whatsoever on how to make that dog obey. And it's interesting, in Plato's Republic, written several hundred years before the time of Christ, he criticizes a pure democracy. So the United States of America is not a pure democracy, it's a republic. So we democratically elect representatives who represent us. But Plato is criticizing a pure democracy, and he says, in a pure democracy, the time will come when people will no longer make even their animals to obey. And I'm seeing that they won't even make their animals obey. They can't embrace the fact that God has made us so incalculably, exponentially. He's made us, like Porky Pig there, he's made us exponentially more noble than animals, that we may legitimately use animals for our good. We can use them for food. Not in the beginning, but after the flood. We can use them for food. We can use them for work. We can kill them if they interfere with our happiness. You don't need to feel bad about killing a mouse or stepping on a cockroach or slapping a mosquito. You have dominion over those things. There was a book that in the past has been very, very influential, which I would recommend to you. It's called Plutarch's Lives. And in Plutarch's Lives, he compares the great leading men of Greece with the great leading men of Rome. It's a very, very manly book. In fact, I've heard that the founding fathers of the United States valued Plutarch's Lives so highly that they thought about the federal government buying a copy for every household, for every citizen. And so at that time, only men were allowed to vote. But that it's so good at cultivating virtue, the kind of virtue that must be present in a democratic republic, or it won't work, that the founding fathers actually thought about distributing Plutarch's Lives among the citizenry. Well, there's one of the chapters. I think it's the one on Caesar. That when Caesar sees a group of people from a visiting country walking down the street, playing with dogs and playing with monkeys, and he asks, "Is it because they don't have children in their country that they are paying so much attention to these animals?" And of course, you all know people who talk about their furry children, who talk about their grand dogs and so on. It's just gotten crazy. I've got a good friend who is a veterinarian. He's been practicing veterinary medicine for many years before things got so crazy, and probably 40 or 50 years now. So I asked him, I said, "What do you think has happened that people are willing to spend so much money on their animals now?" He didn't hesitate. He had two answers right like that. He said, "Well, one thing is the breakdown of the nuclear family. So people don't have kids, these dogs become like children to them. And the second thing is," he said, "women are making a lot more money now than they were making when I first started practicing." This conversation took place 20 years ago. He told me then, when I first started practicing veterinary medicine, the average office visit was $27. And now the average office visit is $270. That was 20 years ago, so I can't imagine what it is now. Some of you probably know. So this is just one example of how we have the right and the responsibility to exercise dominion and to subdue the earth. Even in a sinless world, the earth still had to be subdued. Now, is that happening in your marriage? I mean, you might start with making your dogs obey, but how about your children? Are you exercising a benevolent dominion over them? Now, having dominion and subduing doesn't mean that you have to be mean about this. It doesn't mean that you're irresponsible about this. When the Lord says, "Here, take care of my world," he doesn't mean destroy it. And so there is a responsibility that is incumbent upon us to use the resources that the Lord has made available to us, to use them responsibly, to use them gently. The book of Proverbs says, "A righteous man regards the life of his beast." So if you use it with regard to its life. You know, there's this Old Testament injunction that says you mustn't boil a young goat in its mother's milk. You ever wondered why that is? Well, it's possible that it was some kind of a pagan ritual that was common, but if so, we don't know about it. I think that it's just have a little bit of decency about you. Don't boil the kid in its mother's milk. That's cruel. Don't do that. I think the same principle could apply to if you take the eggs, don't take the setting hen. If you take the setting hen, don't take the egg. Don't take the eggs and the hen at the same time. I think that's just like, have a bit of decency about you as you exercise dominion over the earth. Don't be cruel. But that is one of the purposes for which the Lord has made, and we're able to do it better together than we can apart. And one of the most effective ways that we can exercise dominion and subdue the earth is explained to us beginning in verse 28. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." You see how those things are joined together? Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And so one of the most effective ways that we can influence our world and exercise dominion over the world is through having children. And this is one of the primary functions of marriage. I feel so strongly about this that I would not condone so as to participate in a marriage where the man and the woman had said ahead of time, we don't want to have children. You are just avoiding one of the primary functions of marriage, and that is to have children. Now, how many children are we supposed to have? Well, let's just say that the only guide that we have right here is what we just read. What kind of impression would you get from be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth? I would say have as many as you can responsibly raise to the glory of God. And don't let your idea of responsibility be dictated to you by the outside world. So I want to be sensitive here. I know that there are people who would love to have children and not able to have children. There are people who are only able to have one or two children. I'm not looking down my nose at anybody. And the Lord blessed us with 6, and I've always wished that the Lord would have blessed us with a big family, but we could only have 6. And I think big starts at 8. Then when you get into double figures, when there are 8 and you got a mom and a dad and there are 10 of you, then that's where big starts. Anybody here got a big family? How many?
8, number 9, 2 in November.
Yes. You are being fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth. God bless you. And so that's great. They got a big family. Anybody else got a big family or come from a big family? How many did you come from? One of 10. Good. So, yeah, I don't think you've got to have 10. I don't think that you're responsible to have as many as you're biologically capable of having. So I think that you're responsible not just to have kids and to provide for them, you're responsible to rear them for the glory of God. And that there are health considerations and financial considerations that come into that. But I think that most people for sure have got the idea that children are a burden, children are not a blessing, and let's just have none or have as few as we possibly can have. This past week, I was listening to a report on the radio, and the report was emphasizing, it was National Public Radio. I'm kind of ashamed to tell you that I was listening to National Public Radio. But let me just say before I proceed that I subscribe to the 1689, and so let's go on from there. So I was listening to National Public Radio, and there was a story about the problem of not having children in the United States. Of course, it's an enormous problem in Europe and Asia, big economic problems, and they said that at the present rate, without immigration, we are not going to sustain our population. And so that means that the average married couple is having fewer than 2, which is bare replacement. And they stated that 5 years ago, there were only 3 states out of the 50 states where old people, I assume people over the age of 65, outnumbered young people. There were only 3 states. But now 5 years later, there are 11 states where old people outnumber young people. And so just from a secular perspective, that is an unsustainable policy. And so even J.D. Vance and people in the federal government are encouraging people to have children. So that's just from a secular perspective. And so from a Christian perspective, we want to fulfill the purpose for which the Lord put us together as husband and wife. And one of that is to have children. Have as many children as you can responsibly rear for the glory of God. All right, now we're going to turn our attention next to Genesis chapter 2. And so for me, it's right across the page. You might need to turn your page. And so far, we've seen that we are responsible to, the mission of the home is to show forth the image of God, and that we are to exercise dominion over the earth and subdue it. One of the most effective ways of doing that is through having children. I forgot to give you my little illustration. So I also brought an arrow here. So this bow by itself is not going to be very effective, but if you put this arrow on here, and I brought a blunt tip so that no one would get too alarmed. I also thought, for the sake of coming to Ref Church armed, it might be good to have just something in reserve, just in case everybody in here whose pistol misfires, that we would have something that we could fall back on here. But if I were to pull this back and let it go, then wow, you can really influence things a long way off once you've got a projectile like this. And Psalm 127 talks about children as being arrows in a quiver. So this was in the song that we sang a minute ago. May your quiver be full. It never rhymed with what it was the previous word, but I'm glad you got it in there. So it's an important thing. Let your quiver be full. And so children are regarded as a blessing. I don't know of any place in the Bible where anyone deliberately limited the number of children that they were going to have, except for Onan. So Onan, somebody you can read about in the early chapters of Genesis, was responsible to raise up offspring for his brother, and he didn't want to do it, and so he spilled his seed on the ground. But he was killed. He was killed by the Lord. But we've seen that having children is one of the primary purposes of marriage, and it's one of the ways that we can most effectively exercise dominion over the world and subdue the earth. Now, looking at Genesis chapter 2, let's see what else we can learn from this dumb show. Verse 18. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone." And so the next purpose, the next mission of marriage is to overcome the disadvantages of solitude. To overcome the disadvantages of solitude. It's not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Not good that the man should be alone. Back in the days when my full-time job was teaching, one of the classes that I taught was Great Books. And in the Great Books class, we would read the book Robinson Crusoe. Now, this is a really good illustration, and I'm just in danger of hurrying it up. And so rather than hurrying it up, let's take our break now, and when I come back, we'll talk about Robinson Crusoe and something else that will help us to think through about this. So now we'll take our break.